So my name is Shai Schmetzer. I'm a product manager for the Oracle development tools. And this session is specifically about JDeveloper and ADF. So just so I'll know who the audience is, how many people here are actually using JDeveloper and ADF right now? All right, some of you. I'm assuming 11G. Oh, yeah? Okay, all right. So for you, some of it might not be that new. Okay. Basically, what we're kind of trying to do with this session is educate people who don't use JDeveloper about what's new in JDeveloper. I'll try and cover some of the new stuff that is relatively new or upcoming in JDeveloper a little bit later on. What I'll try and do today is I'll try and explain, first of all, why do we actually have JDeveloper and ADF. Then I'll talk about ADF Essentials, which is one of the new things that we're offering, which is basically a free version of Oracle ADF core functionality. I'll spend about somewhere between 20 minutes around doing a demo just to give you an example of how you actually build application with ADF. And then I'm going to talk about what's upcoming in JDeveloper, what were the things we introduced lately. Okay. So first of all, why we actually need JDeveloper. So JDeveloper is a Java development environment, but for us it's much more than that. It's not just a Java development environment, it's a development environment for anything that has to do with the Oracle platform. So whether it's the database, so you have database modeling and PL/SQL debugging and all of those aspects. It's everything that has to do with all the Java stack, from just the SDK to Java EE to web services to HTML to XML manipulation. It's also the platform for all our middleware development, whether it's the SOA processes, BPM processes, Web Center and portal capabilities, or BI, all the business intelligence and stuff like that. All of those are developed in a single IDE. And the approach here is that we believe that a modern day application, it's not just the Java part. A modern day application has much more than just Java. It involves all of those layers, all of those capabilities, and we wanted to give a single development environment where you can do all of those in a single project with the same gestures, which make you as a developer more productive focusing on doing those type of applications. We also use JDeveloper as the development tool for our Fusion applications. Okay? So this is one aspect that is a little unique to Oracle in that sense. Like half of the company is responsible for manufacturing products and technology, so things like a development tool or a database or a middleware. But there's another half of the company that actually uses those products to build applications, enterprise type of application, all the HR, CRM, project management, financials. And those guys are using this tool and this framework to build their applications. Okay? So JDeveloper is the development tool, and then we have also ADF. And what ADF gives us is a development framework. Okay? It's a Java EE-based development framework, so we basically started from Java EE, and we built on top of it, adding more functionality. So we added a bunch of innovative aspects to what Java EE currently provides. Okay? It also integrates all the layers. So it's not just a framework for doing object relational mapping or persistent. It's not just a framework for UI. It's not just a framework for a controller layer. It's actually a framework that integrates all of those, along with things like security that goes throughout all the layers. So you can define a security on your business service that then will automatically reflect in your user interface. Okay? The main goal of Oracle ADF is to simplify application development for our developers. Okay? So we have about 3,000 developers building Fusion application, and we wanted them to be as productive as possible. And yeah, they could have written low-level Java EE code for everything, but frankly, that wouldn't give us the productivity that we needed, and you wouldn't be able to see Fusion application production in the last year or so. Okay? It will probably take us a little bit longer. What ADF allows us to do is focus on a development approach that is much more visual and declarative. Okay, so rather than writing a lot of low-level Java code manually, you do things visually. The result is actually Java code. Okay, so what you do get at the end of the day is source that you can go to and directly manipulate the source and version control it like anything else. Okay, and debug through it and things like that. but we do the development in a different approach, in something that is much more parallel to what people are used to from, let's say, a .NET environment. Okay. One other aspect that ADF gives us is abstraction from specific technologies in many layers. Okay? So we don't need our developers to learn low-level HTML, JavaScript, and XML, HTTP, or JSON in order to do Ajax. Okay? They work with concepts, where they work with components that shield them from those technologies. And then when technology changes, the framework adapts. Okay? And we can talk about it later on, some examples of that. The other aspect, which might not be relevant to everyone, but is definitely relevant for us, is that ADF allows us to create applications that are customizable, which means that we can provide a base application to one customer and to another customer, the same application. They can go and do customization on those applications, change behavior, change position of things in the application, change validation rules. And those customizations are kept in a layer above the application. We can then upgrade them to the next version of our application, and the customization they did would automatically be applied. Okay? So we basically use Oracle ADF to build everything at Oracle right now. So Fusion application is one example, and those are just some screenshots from, I think this side is actually the HR system. I think the other one is CRM. Okay? And we also use ADF to build some of our products. So on the right side, you see our management tool called Enterprise Manager. It's built with ADF. On the left side, you're seeing, so it's on the other side. Yeah, this side is actually the right side. You're seeing our BPM, which is part of our SOA suite. This is the BPM workspace area where you can basically monitor processes and see how they are performing. We use the ADF to build our support site. So if you go to the Oracle support site today, you're actually running an ADF application. Okay? And beyond us doing it, we also, of course, a lot of customers are using ADF to build their own applications. Okay? And while the previous applications might have all looked the same to some degree, because this is the standard Oracle look and feel, as you can see, customers can actually use ADF to build whatever look and feel for their application that they want to. Okay. So just so you know, those are all public websites that are running based on ADF. There's also, ADF is used for public website, but a lot of the usage of ADF is actually for backend enterprise application that are running inside the organization, not necessarily exposed over the internet. All right, so this is kind of an overview of what is JDeveloper and ADF and why we have them. Okay, basically we have them because we needed tools to make our development effort easier and protect us against technology changes in the future. One thing we announced last week is something called Oracle ADF Essentials, which is basically taking the core capabilities from Oracle ADF and allowing everyone to use them to develop and deploy applications for free. Okay? So, it's not everything that is in ADF, but it's all the pieces that you need in order to build a web-based application. Okay? It got the JSF component. Okay? It got the controller, which extended JSF capabilities. There's the binding layer, and there's ADF business components to access the database. Now, the nice thing about ADF in general and ADF Essential as well is that you don't actually have to use all of those. You can pick and choose. You can choose to use just parts of the framework. Okay? We believe that the power comes when you use everything together, but I'll show you in the demo, I'm actually going to use just 3 of those technologies, not all of them. Okay? Not only is it free, you can also deploy it on Glassfish, which is also a free server. You can also deploy it on WebLogic and WebSphere, and those are the ones that we actually tested. You can probably deploy it on other servers as well. Okay? We just didn't have time to test this. Okay? In terms of development with ADF Essentials, you can get JDeveloper, which is our free development environment. There's also ADF development capabilities in Eclipse. They are still not using the Essential versions, but they will uptake the Essential version in their next version of the Eclipse tooling. Okay. That's one thing that you need to know about ADF. We're expanding the tools that you can use. So if you're currently using Eclipse, you can still use ADF, and you can still do the ADF faces and the controller visually, and you can do binding even. Okay. So that's the kind of the architecture of what is inside the ADF Essentials. On the top, we basically use JSF, and we extend the UI that you can build with JSF by giving you a set of components called ADF Faces components. And this is a set of over 150 JSF 2.0 components that you can use to build your pages. Okay? So even if you're not planning to use ADF at all, right? You're just building a Java EE application using JSF, and you're looking for a rich set of components with a lot of functionality, you can just pick up ADF Faces. You don't need the rest of ADF. Work just like any other set of components. Below that, we have the ADF Controller. And again, this is an option. You can choose to use just the JSF controller. The ADF Controller gives us extra capabilities on top of what JSF gives us. Okay, and we'll talk about it in more details later on. On the bottom, you have business services, and those are basically the services that access your data, do validation logic, whatever you want. And here we actually are pluggable, so you can use any Java class, okay, JPA, JBs, if you want to. You can use REST services, or you can use one of the parts of ADF that we provide, which is called ADF Business Components, which is specifically targeted at working with relational databases. And then there's the ADF binding layer, which offers a very easy way to take and build and connect the user interface and the controller layer to the business services that you have developed. Okay? So if we'll break down what each one of them means. ADF Faces, as I said, a set of over 150 JSF components. It's probably the richest set of components, of JSF components out there to date. It includes everything from your checkbox to a button, to a table, to a tree, to graphs, to carousels, calendars, maps, what have you. Okay? Again, we used all of those to build our own application. So whatever those guys needed, we provided them, those type of components. Beyond visual components, there's a lot of other framework type of components, things that allow you very easily to do drag and drop, to do pop-up windowing. We support things like push to the client, okay, so you can actually fire events to the client. The other aspect here is that we also took those components and made sure that they are not just working in a regular browser, they're also working on the browsers that run on your tablet. So if you take an iPad and you take your ADF application and access it from the iPad, everything would still work. Okay, we adapt to the UI, to the platform, and we actually adjust the UI to match it. So for example, graphs in our regular browser would display using Flash. We automatically convert them to display in HTML5 on an iPad. And this is actually a good example of one key capability that the ADF Faces component gives us, and that's protection from technology changes on the UI layer. Okay? Because when we first created the graph component, it was generating SVG images. But then they stopped developing SVG, and so we just switched the graph component to generate PNG images, static images. And then our users came and told us, but we want the graph to actually have animation, because the managers like to have nice things moving around. So what they did is, or what we did actually is we switched the graph to generate Flash, added animation capabilities. And then people started showing up at work with iPad and told us, hey, the graph doesn't work here, so we just switched the graph to generate HTML5. And throughout all of those changes, the actual developers didn't have to learn any new thing. They were still working with the same component. The component took care of adapting to the new technology. And that's what basically ADF aims to do. It aims to protect us from technology changes. Basically, we spent the last 5 years building a huge application, like thousands of forms, tens of thousands of business services. We don't feel like redoing this anytime in the next 10 years or more. So the framework is built in a way that allows us to adapt to technology changes. Another good example is when we build business services, okay, the part that access the database, initially we were able to allow remote access to them through EJB, okay? And then we switch it, so now you can also do a SOAP web service, and now we're switching it again to allow you to do REST service. And again, the business service is the same business service, you just go through a different wizard to allow you to expose different interfaces. The ADF controller is basically the controller part of your MVC architecture. if you talk to people who are using ADF 11G, that's probably one of the parts that most impressed them. And the reason is because what we did is we took the controller layer, and instead of just having a page flow diagram, we actually converted it to be a complete process flow diagram. So things that in other products and other frameworks require you to get a full BPM engine or BPL engine to run things like that, we can run it as part of your regular Java EE application. Then the other aspect that we did is not just can you run those as processes, you can actually take them and embed them into other flows. So you can actually take one flow and invoke it from another flow, and you can also take one flow and invoke it inside another page. So you can have a full, like a regular JSF page that on a region on the page runs a complete flow of several other pages, okay? Which is a concept that sometimes is hard to explain with slides, so I'm actually going to do it in the demo later on and show you what we're meaning here. But the idea is that you can now modulate the way that you build your JSF application, build contained processes, and then reuse them across multiple applications, across your application in multiple places. And if you're using the full Oracle stack, you can actually use this and have end user add those into your page dynamically. So create a page and bring those into the page whenever they want to. Okay. So again, the controller is also part of ADF Essentials. Then there's the layer called ADF Business Components, and this layer is responsible for building business services that access relational databases. And the goal here is to give you the most out-of-the-box functionality that you need in a declarative way. So you can actually go ahead and create master detail synchronization and list of value and calculated fields and validations and all of those without actually writing low-level Java code. You just point and set some properties and you're done. You have a business service that you can actually communicate with the database in and you only did declarative definition. You can go in and write Java code, but the idea is that you'll only write Java code by exception. So if you have a scenario where the framework doesn't do what you want, you can override and add your own logic. So for example, if you want to override the way that we do locking in the database, you can bring in your own locking mechanism and write it in there. Again, all of those business services are usable across application. You can package them, use them in multiple applications, and you can also expose them with web service interfaces to be activated remotely. Okay? So those are some of the things that it makes, like ADF-BC makes simpler. Everything from query by example, so you can actually query by any of the fields, to list of value, to calculated fields, to a lot of the infrastructure of how you actually work with the database. So range fetching, so not like fetching all the table into the middle tier in one go, and transaction control, and locking, and state management, and all of those are done declaratively. The layer that is the hardest to explain, or it used to be the hardest to explain to Java EE developers, is the binding layer. Okay? What the binding layer is responsible to do is allow you to very easily take and build a user interface that connects to your business service. And in the world of Java EE, until Java EE 6, there was no equivalent to something like that. In Java EE 6, they did something, they moved one step forward, which is CDI, which allows you to declaratively sort of define which business service is used in which page. We're not talking just about how you define this, but we're also talking about the development experience. And you'll see that with the ADF model or data binding layer, I can basically take a Java class or an EJB or a web service, drag and drop it, and create a page. I don't need to write all the manage bin. I don't need to write all the expression language. Okay? And we can do it, again, for any Java class that you'll give us, JPA, EJBs, web services, REST services, and a bunch of other things. So all of those are, and this is basically a list of some of those. All of those things are basically included in ADF Essentials, which you can get for free and start developing today, again, either in JDeveloper or Eclipse. And as you can see, both of them support visual aspects of development. So instead of showing you that part in slides, I'll actually go and build an application. So this is JDeveloper 11G, the current production version. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a new application. I'm going to use what we call the Fusion Web Application template. I'm going to give it a package name and click Finish. And JDeveloper would go off and create 2 projects for me. So for the people in the chip sits at the back, you can see there's a model project, which is where I build my business services. There's a view controller, which is where I build my user interface. So this separation out of the box is aimed again at you building more reusable applications. So on the model layer, you can go ahead and build your business tier, business services, okay? And again, you can use ADF Business Components, which is part of ADF. Because this is Java 1, I thought what would be a little bit more interesting is to actually use Java E standard. So let's create a JPA entity based on some tables in the database, okay? So this is the regular JPA wizard inside JDeveloper, and you create a connection to a database. And by the way, it doesn't have to be an Oracle database. It can be other databases as well, okay? Anything that you have a JDBC connection to, you can use it. It should be an Oracle database, because I'm from Oracle, but that's not. Anyway, you create a connection to the database. You query your data dictionary. You pick up the tables that you're interested in working with. And you click next a few times, and in all of those steps, you can basically set things about how the JPAs are being generated, like what fields, methods, what annotation, what relationships, things like that. But this is kind of boring, because this is something that all the IDEs are doing right now, right? So I'm not going to delay on this. And what you get is you get your basic JPA entity. There's nothing here that is Oracle specific. If you look at the imports, it's pure Java E, right? What we do one nice thing that we do is we actually allow you to now go and generate an EJB session facade that access those and creates, basically acts as a facade to those JPA entities. And this facade will be created with a bunch of methods that allow you to work with the data. So do things like queries and updates and inserts and things like that. So this is, again, something we do nicely for you. Again, if you look at the code, nothing Oracle specific in here, okay? And by the way, I'll click Save now. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to do the first ADF thing that I'm doing so far. So far I just did regular Java E. What I can do in ADF is I can take my session EJB and I can say create data control, okay? And this can be running in the same VM or in a different VM. I'm going to run everything in a single VM. And what was created right now is this file. Okay, and this is the visual way of looking at the file. Okay, it shows you which methods are available here. You can also look at the source. Source doesn't say much beyond the fact that this is accessing the session EJB that you built. What we basically tell ADF now is that this is a business service that you should be able to use in your ADF application. And again, the code in the EJB or in the JPA hasn't changed. I didn't need to go in here and annotate the EJB or the JPA, tell it you're going to be used in a JSF page, okay, which is different from CDI. In CDI, I actually need to go to each business service and define where it's going to be used, okay? Here, I don't do this, okay? I'm completely abstracted from where this business service is going to be used. And by doing this, all I got basically is this little area here where I can see what is inside my session EJB, okay? Now let's go to the more interesting part, which is building a user interface. So here I'm going to build a new JSF page. So it's under web tier page. And this is a normal JSF 2.0 page, uses facelets. You can use templates if you have templates, or you can use one of our quick start layout, and we have all sorts of layout and sub layouts and things like that. I'm going to, again, start from scratch. So actually, let's do a blank page, nothing on it. And what JDeveloper is doing now is taking me into the visual JSF editor, okay? So unlike most of the IDEs right now in the Java market, we actually have a visual editor for JSF. Let's see, and over here on the right, you can work with the regular JSF components, right, which is what, about 25, 30 components, or you can choose to work with the ADF Faces components, which is about, as I said, over 150. And I'm going to take a decorative box, put it on the page, and change the color scheme to be medium. How does medium count? Yeah, medium looks okay. And all this component basically just gives me rounded corners. So it's like child-proofing your ADF application. Actually, it's a cool-looking result. The result is a cool-looking thing for your application. Then I want my page to actually be split into two areas, the top and the bottom. So I'm going to take a splitter, put it in here, but not one next to the other, but rather I want the orientation to be vertical, so one on top of the other. And because we have a high resolution, we can probably turn this into 300 where the separation is. At the bottom, I'm going to use a dashboard component. Where is my dashboard component? Panel dashboard. I'm going to put it here. And a dashboard allows me to take and put boxes in the dashboard. Okay? And the dashboard kind of controls the boxes in it. So if I tell the dashboard, you're going to have 2 boxes in a row, it's going to arrange them like this. And I can tell each box is going to be like 350 pixels. Okay? Something like that. Right? Or 300 boxes. Yeah. Okay, so I actually want all the 3 of them to be in the same row. So this is the dashboard. I'll show you what the dashboard can do more in a couple of minutes. Then on the top, I actually want to show, actually let's split the top again to 2. Where's my splitter? All right. Okay. Again, position this, let's say, in the 400. And then on the right side, I can tell, on the left side, I can take and build an accordion component. Okay, so one accordion, let's call this depth. And you can right click and say I need another accordion component. So again, what I'm showing you is kind of boring. I'm showing you how to build a layout for a page, but what I want you to get an impression of is how you build an application. Okay, this is not what you usually see in Java 1 sessions, right? In usual Java 1 sessions, what you will actually be seeing is more along the line of this tab, okay, which is called the source tab. I don't know. And then you go like, I can't see anything. And the nice thing here is that my code is actually available for me. So if I want to change something, I can go and directly change it in my code. For example, let's find our show detail. Oops. Where is it? Okay, let's do it from here. Let's find one of our boxes and have the text for the box say mu. Okay? Then if I go into the design view, one of the boxes would now say mu. Okay? The same thing I can do from a property. I can go over to the second box and call this one foo. Okay? And it's basically, it's just an easier way to visualize what you're building in terms of user interface. Right, now comes the part that is usually tricky for JSF developers or Java EE developers is, I got my layout for the page, now I need the data in here. So what you would do in normal Java is you'll go into each one of the EJBs, you'll start to annotate it, okay? Then you'll bring components and you'll start to write expression language connecting those to your managed bins. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my EJB that I created here, see that there's a method that returns department and drag and drop it into the page to say create a read-only page for me, okay? I don't actually need all the fields, I'm just interested in those fields, and I'm adding a bunch of buttons that will allow me to scroll between my records of departments, and that's this page, okay, or this section of the page, okay? What JDeveloper does now, it goes over, analyzes the structure of the EJB and the collection that is returned, then puts it on the page and creates the fields for me. Then each department has employees. Again, for the people in the back, you can actually see each department has employee list below it. So I can take this employee list and bring it over here and put it, for example, as a read-only table, turn on some behaviors. Again, maybe remove one of the columns, maybe remove some of the other columns, maybe rearrange columns. Actually, rearranging now doesn't actually, it's not very important because I can rearrange it later on at runtime, okay? And then I get a table with my data. Again, no need to go in each column manually write the expression language that needs to access a backing bin. So this is how you get data in there. Maybe we also want to use the employees over here to have a page where I can actually update some of the data. So we can, again, remove some of the fields. So move those and include a submit button, and then I have a little area where I can update the data. Then the salary field right now, it's showing as a regular input text. Maybe I want something that is more advanced, so I can click on it and say convert this component into a spin box component, right? So a spin box basically allows me to say, okay, the maximum salary is 70,000, the minimum salary is 1, and when I click on the arrow, just increase the salary by 1,000. Okay, that's the way I would do it. What else can I do? I can also take the employees, by the way, and bring them over here to create geographical maps of where the employees are, or a hierarchy viewer, or carousels, or let's do a graph. So there's like 50 types of graphs in here that you can choose from. Most of them I actually don't know what they actually represent, but bar graph I can still manage that. So we'll do a bar graph. And again, what you do is very basic. I say I want salaries on the bar, and I want the last name over here, and I can swap the two if I want to, and I click OK, and this is how I create a graph. So again, the concept is I work with component. That's the nice thing about JSF. I don't need to write low logic code to render visual graphs. Okay? Maybe some, before I already ran it, but I'll do a couple of other things. What if I want to do drag and drop of the boxes there? I want to be able to move them around. All I need to do, like with the UI, is actually take the component called component drag and drop it on each one of the tables. So I put one here, put another one here, and put a third one over here. Okay, so now I can drag those. What if I want my graph to actually not just be flat like flat thing? I want it to actually be with a three-dimensional aspect. So I can go into appearance and set it to be 3D, and maybe even do some animation, something like that, and maybe even do series all over there like this. Okay, so again, a bunch of properties that allow you to fully control what's going on in here. Then you can go refresh your page, and there it goes with animation, right? And you're looking at department 10, and you can look at department 20, and what I want you to notice is that when I scroll through the department, outside of the valid range. Okay, let me revert this back to, what's my data? 1,000. Oh yeah, it's the other way around. The maximum is 70,000 and the minimum is 1. Sorry. Yeah, I need to read more carefully. Save, compile, reload. All right, this should be better. So what I want you to notice is that when I browse between departments, I'm looking at the employees of each one. But look at the page. It doesn't do a full page refresh. What is being refreshed is only the content in each one of the areas. This is Ajax behavior. How much code did I need to write for this? Nothing. Okay? This is out-of-the-box functionality. Look at the table right now. There's a lot of rows in here. And by the way, the table is very rich. I can take, for example, first name, move it to be over here, then say freeze that column, and I can scroll those like that. Okay, and I can unfreeze it, or I can hide columns, so maybe I'm not interested in the email column, so I can just remove that one. It all works, okay? What I want you to notice on the table is I can scroll down, and if you look very carefully when I scroll down in this area, you'll see a message popping up. So scroll, 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 message, fetching data. Okay? So what happened here is I actually, as I scroll my page, my set of records, I'm bringing more data to the browser as needed. So while in other frameworks and other components, if you have a table that allows you to scroll, it basically means that I fetched all the million of employees to the middleware and then to the client. With ADF, we're doing it very smartly. We're doing range fetching. Okay, we're fetching only what is needed. You can actually control the size of the range. The default is 25. And as you scroll down, we bring more information to the client. Okay? The table also allows you to do things like filter the table. So just give me employees with last name starting in M. And you can see everything is synchronized. You get the highlights on the graph. Okay? You get this opportunity here to increase the salary as you want to. There's a date field here, so if you put in an invalid value and you try to leave, you get immediately validation with a red highlight. So this is actually implemented using JavaScript validation on the client. But again, I didn't need to write it. All I needed to do was define the format mask for the field, which I actually derived directly from my preferences. Okay? So this is about, 5-10 minutes of development. And get a full application, and I forgot to show you that you can actually switch the order of the boxes around, right? And you can get this for free, right? Nice. Let me show you one more thing, okay? So you know the JSF controller. So the controller basically allows you to define navigation between pages. What I'm going to show you is what we do with a controller, okay? We switched it from being called page flow to being called task flow. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a task flow. I didn't give it a good name, but task flow definition, that's a good name, which is going to have 2 pages on it. Okay, so this is our visual page flow diagram. So you can take one page, another page, put them on the diagram, and then connect them with a line, call this go. Maybe we need a navigation back, so we'll do a navigation back and call this one back. Okay? This is regular page flow. But if you look on the side, you can see that in our flows, you can also have a router, which basically evaluates some value and decide where to go based on the result. And maybe the result here means that I need to invoke a method before I go to a page. So suddenly from just being a page flow, you're looking at a full process flow. Okay? Actually, I'm not going to use a function right now in a router. I'm going to keep it a simple flow. So we're just going to have 2 pages. Let's actually create the pages. Now, if you can look very carefully, this is actually the extension is JSFF. So it's not just a regular JSF. This is what we call a page fragment. So this is a page that can be included in other pages. And I'm going to still use the department EJB that I created. I'm going to show you another thing that ADF gives you out of the box, and this is queryable attributes, so a query component for an EJB. So I'm looking at departments, and I'm just going to create basically an area which will allow me to query the department based on any of the fields. Then in this, okay, I would want to actually click on one of the departments in the result, go to the next page and edit it. So instead of having this as a text field, let's convert this one, convert to a link. So this is another like a navigation component basically. Still want it to show the value, and in terms of what it will do the go navigation. So this is the navigation for my page flow. So once I click here, it would basically go to this page. So on this page, what I want to do is I want to show the departments and allow people to basically edit them in a form. So we'll do a form. Again, don't need all of those fields. Add a submit button. And maybe the submit button that I just created now, this one will go back. So the action would be back. Okay? So this is a very simple page flow. Okay? Now, what I want to do is I want to actually include this flow in this page. Right? So you notice that I have 3 boxes, and the reason is because in the 3rd box, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the flow and drag and drop it into here, and when I drop it, you can see that I can drop it either as a region or a dynamic region. Okay? So right now, again, because I'm doing just a basic thing, I'm just going to drop it as a region. Okay? And I'll explain what is a dynamic region in a second. But the idea here is that I'm going to run this whole flow of 2 pages in an area in my page. Now, because this is a complete flow, maybe I want to tell it you're kind of independent from the containing flow, so you're not using the same set of data. So there's a property here called behavior in terms of transaction, and I'm going to tell it you're not sharing the data control with your parent. Okay? So this is an independent task flow running inside this page, and now I can do run. Okay? Actually, I didn't need to do run. I can just save and compile. Anyway, so I dropped it as a region, and this means that in my page, in that box, there will always be this area running this flow. I could have also dropped it as a dynamic region, which means that at runtime, I can decide what is going to be displayed in the 3rd box. And I can change it at runtime based on anything that I want to. So this actually allows you to create a much more effective single-page interface application, where you go into one page, and the content of what you're showing on the page and the functionality changed based on what the user does. Okay? So as you can see, I'm still the application still works as before, but now in this area here, I have a query component which allows me to look up all the department that starts with the letter M, find one, click on it, and go to edit mode, where I can edit it or go back. It's not just a basic mode. I can also go into an advanced mode of a query and say, I need department not that start with M, but rather that the location is greater than, I don't know, 1600. Okay, and I get those, click on those, get the data. And everything runs inside an area in my page. And I can tell you that I can now take the same thing and use it in another application. It packages up the flow as a jar file, which I can go and use in other places. All of this, everything that I showed you so far, is included in ADF Essentials and available for free going forward. Okay? Runs on Glassfish, works perfectly fine. As I mentioned, ADF has a bunch of other stuff beyond that. So the green stuff are what is free. If you want other stuff like mobile development or development for Office, Microsoft Office front end, if you want access to our SOA suite, then you need those parts. Okay. All right, so we have about 20 more minutes. So let's talk about what's new in JDeveloper. So the current version of JDeveloper is 11.1.2.3, which was released last week, all right? And it's our third 11.1.2 version that we released basically since June 2011. A few of the new things there. I don't know if you're familiar, but Oracle now owns Sun, and Sun had an IDE called NetBeans, and the NetBeans team is actually reporting to the same guy that we report to. And one thing you can now see is us cooperating on stuff. So for example, one thing we introduced in JDeveloper is we took the OSGI infrastructure that they built, enhanced it a little bit, and this is now part of JDeveloper. We did the same thing, by the way, for the profilers. We took up the profilers from NetBeans, and they are now available inside JDeveloper. Okay? This release is actually focused on a lot of performance improvement. There's a new look and feel, a lot of focus on usability as well, and enhancement across all the place. A few of the new features I mentioned: profilers. Okay, so we have a new memory profiler and a CPU profiler. We have integration with Glassfish, so directly from in JDeveloper you can right-click on a project and create an EAR file that deploys into Glassfish. Okay, you can do remote debugging into Glassfish if you want to. We now have support for Maven as well, so that's another thing that we introduced a couple of versions ago. And a lot of enhancement in the ADF space as well. Some examples: we support JSF 2.0 now with our components. Previously it was JSF 1.2. We have a visual skin editor, so I forgot to mention, but the application you built before can have a completely different look and feel by you changing a CSS file. So you can actually skin all of our components, and we have a visual skin editor that allows you to skin them in an easy way. I mentioned the touch gesture support, which is also new in the latest releases. And we introduced new components, so we're constantly adding more components. So for example, we now have thematic map, which allows you to show a map divided into regions and then color code them or highlight them based on values of something, and it can be a world map or a county map or various levels over there. Okay? We also do drag and drop between Flash and HTML, for example, between the map and a table. We can do those type of things. One other new thing that is actually still not production, but we're actually demoing it throughout this week. We actually have a hands-on lab running at Open World about it throughout the week. There's one running right now, actually, and there's another one tomorrow. Is something called ADF Mobile. So, as you probably know, there's a lot of people now with smartphones and tablets, and they want to access their enterprise application. What we wanted to do is we wanted to allow our developers to build applications that run on mobile devices. But we didn't want to bother teaching them how to write at the Xcode level for iOS or at the whatever level, the Java level for Android. Okay? We wanted them to still work with the same concept they have and not need to learn specifics of the device. Okay? So what we built is something called Oracle ADF Mobile. Oracle ADF Mobile basically takes the same concepts you've seen now and extends them to a mobile device development to create an application that actually installs and runs on the device. Okay? So you build the application once, and you can run it either on Android or on iOS. You don't need to develop twice. Okay? The application, if you need to write logic in it, you use Java, same language as the rest of ADF. The way that you build visually the application is using components, just like you build a JSF application. The way that you do navigation between pages, a controller, just like you do task flows, just like you do in ADF. So the idea is that anyone who's an ADF developer and was developing with ADF for the web now can do it for mobile devices. Okay? Let me show you. So you can go and from the same place that you created a new Fusion application, you can also create a new mobile application. Okay? Same process. Call it A. Maybe before that I call it something else. You get 2 projects like before. Okay? And then in the View Controller project, you can say I need a new, and then you go Project Technologies, Mobile, ADF Mobile Page. Okay? You can decide what you want to have on your page, something like that, and you get the code. Okay? Again, I don't like code too much, so I prefer to work with a preview. Yeah. So here's my little page so far. So in my page, you can see again from the structure pane, I have, for example, this header over here. I can go into the properties and say this is my employee application. Okay? There's a button here that does something. So I can call this find. Okay? And you can see that there's an action here. So if I have a page flow, okay, I can create like a navigation between a few things. So under here, I can also create a task flow. And I can say my first page, so I take my first page, put it here, it calls another page. It looks familiar? Yeah, you saw the same thing like 2 minutes ago, right? But now you're doing it for a mobile device. Okay? So that's the idea. And again, maybe you need some logic. So maybe you have a new Java class, and I'll show you basically what the data binding means. I can take any Java class. Let's create class 1 and create a method here. Public string say hi string name. Right. Return hello plus name. Right. So this class can do any logic that you want. As far as I'm concerned, it can go to an SAP system, fetch data, and get me the result of an employee from SAP or whatever. Once you do this, you do the same thing you did on an ADJB. Okay? You go to your Java class. Where is my Java class? There it is. You right-click and you say create data control, just like you did for the EJB. Okay? You get the file created here. Not interesting. Okay? You go back to your page. Okay? And now in the data control palette, you can actually see this class. And you can take the method called say hi and drag and drop it into your page, right? Like that. To create a parameter form which will allow you to pass the name, and then maybe you want to show the result on the page as an output text. Okay? Same thing as developing web. The one difference is that over here, beyond just your class, you also have device features. So if you need, for example, to find a contact or get a picture or work with the GPS on your device or send an SMS, you can do this. So you can take the SMS message and basically drag and drop it into your page to have a button that sends an SMS to the person. So you probably need to and the body of the text, right? Things like that. And then you can adjust it instead of looking at Android. Maybe you're targeting an iPad, so you get suddenly more space, right? So you can adjust it here. So this is the basics of ADF Mobile. At the end of the day, you go over here and you say deploy the application, new deployment profile, and you can choose whether you're deploying to Android or iOS. Same application runs on both. All right. Yeah, and beyond developing on-device content, you can also bring in content from remote services. So you can actually take the ADF Faces page that you built before and incorporate it into this page, into the page that I just created, and combine them all into a hybrid application. And that's what ADF Mobile is. It's a hybrid content application. Okay, so you can have local files running, you can have remote content coming in, and you can have device service integration. Okay? Visual development, I just showed you that, so the slide is kind of redundant. Okay. That's the overall architecture. I'm not sure if it's really interesting, but what happens is at the end of the day, you get our application runs inside a container on the device. So this is the big box that you see here. Okay? You use components to design your page. You have a controller. Everything is running in here, and it creates user interface using HTML5. Okay? This is the interface that you see on the device. You can skin the interface using CSS again, CSS3. If you need to communicate with device services, we use PhoneGap, and as you saw, you don't actually need to code PhoneGap. We give you it in drag and drop format way, right? You can also have local Java code running on the device, maybe accessing a local database if you want to. And you can also bring in content, HTML type of content from other locations to display, work with REST or SOAP services to get data into your application. That's the overall architecture. Okay? And that's basically all I had to show today. And actually, the demo went faster than I expected. So the basic things to remember, okay? JDeveloper is our development tool. Does regular Java if you want to, but it does much more than that. ADF Essential, basically we took all the capabilities, all the core capabilities that we built into ADF, and it's now available for you for free, okay? So even if you're just interested in graphs that can do animation, take those components for this. If you really want to do more productive development, take the whole JDeveloper and ADF together, and you see that the development experience is a little different than what you probably saw in other Java 1 sessions throughout the week. Okay? That's about it. If you want to learn more, we have a Twitter feed, we have a Facebook feed, we have a very large community, which right now actually has an event at Open World. So we can all run there and maybe catch the 5 last minutes of having beers. But if you look at our Twitter and Facebook feeds, not during Open World, you will see that every day there are more blogs and updates of people sharing their experience using ADF. If you want to download this thing, follow tutorials, just Google JDeveloper or Google ADF or Google ADF Essentials. You'll get to a page where you can download everything. There's tutorials, step-by-step instructions. You can try it at home. This is the URL that you can remember, oracle.com/jdev. That's all I had to say. Any questions? Yes? Yeah. Yeah, so you can actually, in the JDeveloper that is currently production, you can do, sorry, I need to cancel here. You can do File, New, and where is this? Do Maven. Yeah, so you can create a Maven-based application or a Maven-based project, and it creates all the POM and stuff like that for you, right? So let's create a Maven application, as for example. Okay. And the structure is basically the same. It has the POM created for you. It synchronizes libraries across the project and the POM. So yeah, that's another new thing that we added in the current JDeveloper. So it's production, right? Yeah. Any other questions? Yes. Yeah, so that's another aspect of our components. And again, what you need to remember is that those components are used for our enterprise application. We wouldn't be able to sell our applications to the market if they weren't fully accessible. So you can actually use a screen reader on this application. The UI adjusts to it. It also supports internalization. So maybe you have customers that need to work in Arabic. We can automatically switch everything to work right to left. Those are all built-in functions in ADF Faces. Okay. Yes? With what? Not, well, actually, yes. So, to JDeveloper, there's an extension to JDeveloper that we developed called TPC, Team Productivity Center. When you bring it in, you have inside JDeveloper menus that allow you to interact with Jira or Bugzilla to track things. And it also has integration with Hudson, so you can actually track Hudson builds from inside the IDE. So from the IDE, you can actually see if your build was successful or not, and go over there. We have integration with JUnit as well, with Ant if you want to. Yeah, so that's basically it. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. If you liked what you saw, just share it with the other guys in the Java one. All right? Thanks.